So, hey, it's
Hey.
Monday. So, it's Motivational Monday. So, happy Motivational Monday. And hopefully this week, the start of this week, you've been able to motivate a whole lot of people. I think I motivated myself today. I'm super excited. So, we are here with Gabrielle Tate. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Tonight, we're going to be talking about eliminating the stigma of mental health or surrounded by mental health.
For
I
sure.
think just in this hour, there's so much that's going on. There's so many traumas. There's so many,
Yes.
there's a lot.
Situations. Yes.
It is extremely stressful with COVID and relationships and
Mhm.
cultural wars and things of that
Mhm.
nature. I believe that this is extremely pivotal for this hour.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to find out how to cope with some situations, but we really want to dive into why people aren't really reaching out and why people aren't really getting help and what a stigma really is. So, Gabrielle, hey,
Hey.
all
Hi.
right. So tell us a little bit about you.
All right. So I am originally from North Carolina. I am a social worker, currently working at a local hospital here in Tulsa, where I'm doing medical social work, kind of helping with discharges, connecting with resources, that type of thing. I am just a few months shy of my clinical license, so we're
Nice.
waiting for the board, and then we're going to take our test and pass it, and then and then we'll be a licensed clinical social worker. So that is my ultimate goal. I am passionate about mental health, learning more about mental health because it is so broad, it's so vast that, I mean, it's hard to be just a professional of mental health, because it changes daily. The evidence-based research changes daily, how we cope with it, what we're learning about new disorders. It just changes. And so it's always going to be something new, something different. What we talk about today may change in the next week or so because we found some new study or whatever. So it's just exciting. It's a passion of mine. And I truly believe it is something that, a conversation that has to be had.
Yeah.
It has to be had.
So why do you think this conversation is so important? I know why I think it is. I think we're in an hour that's extremely stressful and
Mhm.
people are coping the best way that they know how, and
Mhm.
sometimes they don't have the right tools. So why do you think that's important?
I believe talking about mental health is important because probably the lack of conversation. Simply put, because we don't talk about it, it needs to be talked about because it's ever present in every area, and it's present in work, it's present at school, it's present in our home. So many individuals are experiencing symptoms. So many individuals are, experiencing an actual mental health or mental illness or a diagnosis. So, I mean, it's just too prevalent not to begin the conversation. Um, it's so much that needs to be taught about it. It's so much that needs to be normalized. You were talking about coping or counseling and maybe psychiatric medications. I mean, just social support groups. It just needs to be discussed. And sometimes it's a lack of knowledge. Sometimes it's a lack of understanding. And sometimes it's just because I haven't been presented with it or I haven't experienced it, whether it's myself or my family, I don't know much about it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And I don't care to know much about it because it doesn't necessarily involve me,
Oh, wow.
and so, I mean, it's just so many reasons as to why we don't talk about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I think it's important. It's important because it is way too prevalent in today's time to not discuss it.
Wow. So we're addressing eliminating the stigma. So what is a stigma and why do we need to eliminate it?
So, I mean, in layman's terms, just think of stigma. I kind of was reading. I said, well, what's the definition? But just to kind of simply put, it's like your actions and attitudes in regards to mental illness. So, how you perceive mental illness or what your natural thoughts are about it is what a stigma would be. Why you need to eliminate it? Because sometimes what you perceive something to be may not be true, right?
Yeah.
You know, and we have to eliminate it because it kind of just makes the other individuals that are experiencing it alone, and they isolate themselves, and then their recovery time is even longer because they don't have an outlet. You know, they don't know where to go, what to do, how to do, because how we perceive or how our attitudes are in regards to mental illness. So that's pretty much what stigma is, just your attitude and your actions in regards to mental illness.
And generally, and you're saying today, it's negative. It's a negative stigma.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we have came a long way, you know. I mean, we're talking maybe 50, 60 years ago when, you know, individuals had behaviors, or individuals had, we would call it now, psychiatric breaks or whatever. You know, they were sent to asylums and sent to the you know, the hospitals that you just locked you up, and with no therapy, no treatment, no education.
Wow.
And you were just, you know, secluded. You had straight jackets. So I feel like from that point to now, yes, we have definitely grown, right? We've definitely grown. Now, from this point further, I mean, we have a lot of work to do, you know, and I think it, you know, as a social worker or just in any individual, it is our duty to learn about that, because because it's so prevalent. You know, it's our duty to learn about it, and it's no more, we can't kind of go on the slide, well, I don't know, well, I'm not sure, I didn't. It is way too much information out here. There's too many resources in regards to learning or educating yourself about it. I was coming across if you don't mind, I was coming across a report that was talking about, it made it easy to envision whether or not you have stigmas, you know.
Okay.
And I just want to kind of read a few because it was interesting, because I mean, even for myself, I'm like, oh yeah, I do say that, or maybe I do kind of have that attitude or that action towards individuals who may be mentally ill. So one of them was phrases like, she's lost her marbles, or he's not playing with the full deck.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of promotes mental health stigmas, you know, because it kind of isolates that person, you know what I'm saying? And then mental illness is not the person's fault, you know, and we don't know that person, maybe she's off her marbles, but we don't know if she's doing everything that she can to stay on her marbles. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
We don't know if she's in therapy. We don't know if she's talking about it, or developing coping skills, or taking medications, or being active in group. We aren't aware, but we just, you know, have phrases like that. Or the other one was like crazy Halloween costumes, where people dress up in a straitjacket, or things like that, where there are individuals who suffer from paranoia and can be violent and are experiencing all of these issues, and we make light of it, you know. But it's very real to the individual that's experiencing it. So I thought it was pretty interesting, and it's so common to think that way, or to have that thought process in regards to mental illness, because we, you know, again, a lack of education, lack of knowledge and understanding about the subject. So I just thought that was very interesting.
Let me ask you this. I mean, just the way that you've posed that, would you say that most people think that mental illness or mental health is associated with mental weakness?
Oh, for some reason, I think individuals do equate that. And I liken to, let's just think about our physical body, or a medical issue. If we are having a stomach ache and we've had it maybe a day, right? Now we may have a little temp, you know, and we take some Pepto-Bismol, you know, and maybe it's a 24-hour bug or whatever, and we kind of get through it, right? And then what happens maybe a week down the road, where we realize that this is still coming up, I'm still experiencing these stomachs, my temp is going up, you know, now other stuff is added to like what I'm feeling physically. Well, after a certain amount of time, and naturally you're going to maybe be like, yeah, I might need to go to urgent care, or I might need to go to a doctor, right? And so we go to the doctor willingly because we're feeling a certain type of way. We know that something isn't right. We know that this isn't normal. We'll go to a medical doctor to see kind of what that issue is, or is it something that I can take? Is it something that I can do? Is it something in my lifestyle that can change, right?
Yeah.
Is it something that I need to take this out or take that out? Like, we're willing to do it most times, right?
Yeah.
And it's normal and it's accepted. And it's like, well, why didn't you go to the doctor? Like if you've been feeling this for 3 months, why didn't you go to the doctor?
Yeah, exactly.
Or you got those family members where like, oh, I finally went to the doctor, and you find out that you've had a serious issue when you could have prevented it, or maybe learned how to cope with it maybe a month or two ago, that would have subsided some of your symptoms, but you waited, right, until it was so big. If we can think about it just in that simple aspect, just as our physical body, it's the same thing with mental illness. If I am, or I've experienced a trauma, or life has happened, and I begin to change, my character begins to change. I'm no longer doing the things that I used to do. I'm no longer as engaging as I used to be. I'm finding that I'm scared to go this place and that place, and I'm finding that, my heart is beating fast when I'm speaking to people, or I find that my mind is just racing constantly all day, and I'm unable to redirect it and refocus it. Or I'm finding that I'm crying all of the time, uncontrollably, or I'm seeing all these different things that have not been my norm. And yet I find the reason to just deal with it. Why, right? When there is, I wouldn't say you would go see a medical doctor. You can, initially, some people who experience some anxiety and depression sometimes go to their primary care doctor first, because now it's like, well, I'm feeling this way and I can't really sleep, and I'm, experiencing minute symptoms. So they may go to the medical doctor. But then when we've realized that it has been over a course of time, and I haven't been able to resolve whatever it is that's going on, we don't seek the professional help in regards to that. There are professional people who have expertise in that area, just like your medical doctor, right? And I think I can't answer why people equate mental illness to mental weakness, or just weakness, period. But it's very, it's sad. It's not. When we look at the example with the physical body, we can kind of sit back and not understand, right? We're just like, well, I don't understand. It's the same thing. Why don't we seek the professional help? Well, it's because of the stigmas. It's because of the, public perceptions of individuals who have mental illness.
So what are some of the effects of these stigmas?
Well, for one, it will, the stigmas of like a public stigma, it will cause the individual not to seek treatment. So then they're suffering, experiencing all of these things, having all of these issues in their mind or in life. So they're experiencing all of this and they're reluctant to go. Simply because of the public perspective, or the stigmas related to that. Oh, well, she's again off her marbles, or she's violent because she's diagnosed with schizophrenia. You know what I'm saying? Or, oh, she's just up and down. She got bipolar. Well, how do you know? How do you know? It could have just been a bad day, you know what I'm saying? And it just could have been the wrong time, but how do you know? It's your attitudes and your actions in regards to what mental illness is. And again, it's the lack of education, the lack of knowledge and understanding of the topic. So I I don't know, and that's a good research thing for me. I mean, to
Yeah.
bring to get a better understanding why it equates to weakness, and the effects. Another effect would be discrimination.
Wow.
Individuals who have mental illness, are more likely to be discriminated for jobs,
Yeah.
for housing.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of think about it as a manager or a rental property manager who is uneducated about mental illness, have never, or I would say, have never experienced it, or any symptoms of mental illness. And this person, says that, I'm schizophrenic, or I'm experiencing anxiety and depression. And they're more reluctant to be discriminated against, because if I don't know that not every schizophrenic is violent, or not every person who is bipolar is unstable, or not every person who experiences depression is lazy,
Right.
right? Or the person who experiences anxiety is just so fearful that they don't come out of the house. If I'm uneducated and I'm unknowledgeable about it, then I'm not going to rent to you, because you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want my property to be destroyed, and I have all of these preconceived notions about them. So it hinders individuals for lifestyles. I mean, simply put, your housing, your jobs, the
Yeah.
sustainability of jobs, not even just getting a job, but keeping the job, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, if you don't have the manager who is educated and understand kind of what is going on, or what you're experiencing, it's hard to have the sympathy and empathy that an individual may need to perform,
Hmm.
And again, I mean, you think about it, it's not their fault
Yeah.
that they're feeling this way. It's no one's fault that they're feeling this way. It's just where some things that is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see. There was another one I found interesting as a fact, or a harmful effect of a stigma. Bullying,
Hmm.
physical violence, harassment. They're more reluctant to that because they're mentally ill. Because again, it can be seen as unstable or weak, and I can take advantage of you
Yeah.
because you aren't aware, or
Yeah.
you would think that you're not aware of what's going on. Excuse me, aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, some health insurance.
Hmm.
Health insurance sometimes don't cover mental illness treatment.
Yeah.
So if you have a job that does not provide, or provide only medical benefits, and you're suffering from a mental illness, then it's difficult to receive treatment at times.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of effects of stigmas or public stigmas of mental illness, because it has a trickle down effect. I
Yeah.
mean, it has
It
an
does.
effect on our finances. I mean, financially, as a country. I mean, mental illness is so unfunded, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So let
And
me ask you this. We've kind of talked about maybe some disorders or some extremes. What does being mentally healthy look like just for the average person? I may not necessarily have a mental disorder, but I may have an episode of depression, or I may have an episode of anxiety, or something happens and something traumatic happens and I end up in a downward spiral. What does that look like? And kind of how do I cope with that? And what are some steps for me to
well,
take?
so what does a mentally healthy person look like? I would think I would say it's more of a how we respond to events,
Okay.
right? So our response to either trauma, our response to when we get upset, our response to how we go along with something that we don't really agree with, like how the response that we are able to give and provide helps with your mental health. If that makes sense. So
Okay.
if have an individual who gets upset easily, and not necessarily has a mental disorder, but just today is just not the day, right? And I am not necessarily mentally ill, but in my mind, I don't feel well. You know what I'm saying? I got a stomach bug in my mind,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, I just don't feel well. And so what a healthy person would do, they would find ways to cope, So I know that when I'm angry, it is not healthy for me to punch someone
Okay.
or to fight someone. But what a healthy thing I can do for anger is scream in my pillow, or punch a punching bag, or take 10, 15 seconds and count down and breathe. So those are ways a healthy person where let's look at it from a physical standpoint. A healthy person physically would normally what? Exercise, eat right, kind of make good choices with food as it relates to that. Doesn't necessarily mean that they always, right? I don't exercise every day, but I have a routine of pouring into my body. And
Yeah.
so for a mentally healthy person, I would deem it being, pouring into my body or pouring into my mind with information and education, pouring into my mind with things that I enjoy, people that are positive, surrounding myself with positivity. A mentally health person would know and understand their boundaries and their triggers and kind of what may come about and how to respond to. So I would say that would be, I would consider that as a healthy person in their mind. Doesn't mean that they have the best days all days, but it's just all in our response to when those situations and things happen. How
Right.
do we respond to that?
So they're more, I guess, self-reflective and
Hmm.
proactive in their
Hmm.
response and how they're going to handle things, as opposed
Hmm.
to just a react or an automatic reaction
Hmm.
to something.
Because if we keep looking at the physical part, because sometimes I feel like we understand the physical part of things more than the
Yeah.
mental
Yeah.
part, and like we can kind of get it if we get it the physical part. So like again, if I am a healthy person, I would consider a healthy person not necessarily by their body type and but their actions and their thoughts behind food, or their intentions of pouring in good
Yeah.
into my body, whether it's
Yeah.
food, whether it's not being in maybe sometimes social scenes that will provoke me to drink or do drugs or have unprotected sex or do whatever that isn't physically helping my body, right? So that is still a physical health as a physical healthy person when we are mindful of our reactions, our responses, what we do. You
Hmm.
know, life throws us lemons. How do we respond to it?
Yeah.
I would say that as a healthy person, we're just conscious of what we pour into ourselves. What are we listening to? What are we seeing? What are we saying? Because those are all portals into our mind and our soul and our emotions. So just watching what we're doing.
So is that someone that would take precautions and challenge the thoughts, that negative thoughts that come across their
Mhm.
minds as well?
Absolutely. That's a form of coping. So um, when we're having thoughts, when we say you have an individual having racing thoughts, meaning my mind is going.
Yeah.
It's going from this point to that point, and it just is constant, right? And I can be doing something, but my mind is just going, going, going. Well, sometimes some individuals, in order to cope with that, they meditate. So I'm on purpose learning how to ground myself. I am on purpose learning how to quiet my mind, you know? And as we practice it and get educated about it and learn how to actually do this, then that will help me when I'm in a situation or chaotic situation and my mind begins to go, I know how to get to that place, right? So that's pouring into my mental health while learning different coping skills, or um, Another one, as far as like racing thoughts, or if my mind is going, it could be, physical activity, yoga or
Yeah.
music. There are so many coping skills that we can just have a whole session about. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, because I mean, we're gonna cope regardless. Like I was telling you the other day, like we're gonna respond to trauma regardless. We're gonna respond to events and personalities and situations. It is how we respond is the question. How do we respond to those life events, and so maybe coping, doing yoga, doing a physical activity, reading a book. Those are all things that we do, probably already do, not realizing that this assists me with coping with this life change or this life event,
Yeah.
or motivation. So that's all in being mentally healthy.
I will say for a long time, and I'm gonna share about me.
Hey, that's fine.
So for a long time, like I ended up getting in a car accident in 2017.
Oh no. Okay.
And it was intense. It was really it I ended up hitting someone. Like, okay, so here's their car. They came out of a driving, like a parking lot, and I was driving down the street. They failed to yield or stop to let me go. So they just came right out while I was driving, and I had the right of way. Okay. So I find myself kind of in a frustrating situation when I see people coming out the side, and my automatic response. So this tells you I need some help in this area. I need to cope. Because I will see, and it doesn't matter where I'm at, but my automatic response is to like swing over into the other lane without even looking, okay? And then I get extremely tense. So that would be like me in like some panic or something, like some trauma.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
It does sound like it. With that situation, I think it's so funny. I was just having this conversation with another individual about driving and kind of being scared to go over, bridges or doing things that some people find that it's easy to do, in a car. And it's so important to, when you having those feelings, so you're about to get in a car, you're gonna get you're gonna be at a stoplight or a stop sign. Sometimes talking to yourself.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? Because first of all, if we just think about it, thoughts are running through our heads, right? It's not going anywhere. It's staying right in our head, in our mind. But what power do we have? It is through our words. It's what we speak.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? There's a life and death that comes through our mouth. And so speak life. Speak to yourself. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, yes, I have experienced that in 2017. That was very scary. I was very, fearful of driving or whatever. Today, I'm going to get in this car. I'm going to plead the blood of Jesus. I'm going to do what I need to do. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but I'm going to be fine. You get what I'm saying? You're talking to yourself, and I'm going to drive the best way that I know how. I think a lot of times, just with situations like that, because the situation we've encountered was out of control, we now have the sense of wanting to be in control.
Yes.
Right? I want to be in control over everything. That means your car. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? The stoplight. I want to be in control. And I'm gonna hold tight to whatever it is that I can, whether it's the steering wheel, not understanding that it's now putting my body in shock. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm now so tense to to the wheel, and my mind's not clear. But yet my mouth is closed.
And I'm hollering at the people in the car because I'm like,
so you saying something, but just not the right stuff, right?
I'm hollering at them. My relationships are being affected because I'm going through this. Shut up.
Yeah. So the preventive thing, we could kind of talk to ourselves. We know we're about to go to the store. We know we're about to go on a long drive. Speak to that stuff. I think preparing yourself about what's going on, you do have control over that. So
That's
take
good.
control over it. You don't have control over the road and the people they're in, but you do have control on how you respond to it. And responding erratically gives you that result too. And then that feeling of like, oh my God, now I'm jittery, I'm all the way up here, whereas if we respond peacefully, results would be peaceful.
That's good.
Even if something happens on the road, I have peace on the inside.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe speak to those things,
That's good.
too, and tell your own self, hey, we're not going to have rage just because of something that happened that wasn't our fault before.
Yeah.
I have power right now to combat that. And this is what we're going to do. And having a pep talk with yourself is needed and is necessary, and is another way of coping too,
That's
using
good.
your words. So
That's really good.
yeah.
I know how to act now.
That'll help respond.
So we talked about this yesterday, and I wanted to talk about it today. I think that we just not being a part of the mental health scene or whatever that looks like. I don't know that I fully understand what the doctors do or what a counselor does versus a therapist versus a psychiatrist and versus all of that. Can you break that down for us? And because you said some really cool things that that I really thought were, pretty vital and important to kind of bust through this stigma.
Okay. Let's try to put in a simple term. I think so. A counselor, psychotherapist, what else are we called? Clinicians. They're pretty much the same. Sometimes you are able to get, the talk therapy or behavioral therapy, right? That's where you're going into going into an office or wherever the setting may be. Now it's virtually, right? You're going to talk. Yeah, you're going to go talk to a professional about maybe concerns or feelings or symptoms or situations that you've experienced or currently are experiencing, and you're going to seek techniques and tools in regards to how to cope with it, right? Or how to let go of it, how to process life that, wherever you are. So those terms like psychotherapist or clinician and counselor and behavioral therapist, they're pretty much the same thing. You're going into a professional setting to work on the behaviors that you're experiencing or to touch base on some trauma that you've already experienced and you see that it's trickling in other areas, right? And then there are, psychiatrists who are individuals who kind of can do the same thing. They can do the counseling or whatever. It's usually brief, but they are kind of have the medical part of it too. Where as if it's like a chemical imbalance. So maybe in our makeup, we don't have enough endorphins or the hormone or the chemicals that we need to provide energy, or the chemicals that we need to provide or to know when to go to sleep, or to maybe we don't have enough of that, or something is going on behaviorally that is kind of stopping us to reach that. Then you would be referred to a psychiatrist who can maybe find a medication that will go along with your therapy or your counseling. And I also, like when I was a school-based therapist and helping with kids in school, providing therapy, I would always, explain it as a helper. Therapy is a helper. Mom and dad or social is a helper. Our community, church and social groups is a helper. Psychiatry, which is medication maybe, is a helper. These are all helpers for you to be able to be healthy mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes some may need only one helper. Sometimes some may need 3 and 4 different helpers. And so neither one of them are wrong, right? Or neither one of them are bad. It's just that individual, what they need at that time in order to be healthy.
Yeah.
with the best healthy as they can be, right? So like if a person, like if I had a kiddo that I was seeing and maybe we were working on a topic, or maybe we were working on coping skills,
Yeah.
right? And we've gone through it maybe for weeks, right? And I'm just like, the individual or the kiddo is not getting it, or they're not utilizing it, and I find that they're jumping from this place to that place. It's just too hard to focus. It's some other issues that are, it's not that they don't get coping skills, it's just that right now the symptoms that they're experiencing may be a little bit too strong just for therapy, right? So then I would just naturally kind of talk with, my clinical team, and then see about referring for psychiatry. So that will kind of be the process. Not everybody needs it. It's not a one fix all.
Hang on, hang on. I got a question right here. I want to interject.
Oh,
Does every clinician or counselor go in with the mindset that they want to medicate?
I can't speak for everyone, right? But just I would liken to it being no. That's not like my main goal. When I first meet with this individual and they are experiencing symptoms of, depression, and I want, oh yeah, you need to be referred to a psychiatrist. Maybe have you thought about this medication? That's not going to be my first thing to do. My first thing is for one to build rapport. This obviously has had to have been an issue for a while. And for you to have come into my office to meet with me and talk with me has such courage and such, strong feelings about your character and your willingness to work on this. That is not even, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
not even my thought process. Now, I want to commend that behavior. I want to commend that action, because I want to build rapport first. And then we can kind of dive into what treatment plan is best for you. I explain kind of what I would be doing and what we would be doing together, how we would involve family if you want, or whoever you count as family, how we would take all these other approaches. And if we feel as though we are not maybe progressing in the manner that we think we should, or a lot of stuff is still happening and occurring, then we can always seek outside. You know what I'm saying? And that just wouldn't be my first go-to. Now, if there's an individual who comes in and is just, because I'm working at a psychiatric hospital, we see a wealth of just different things, and very different and interesting people who are experiencing real life issues, you know what I'm saying? And they may come in erratic and hearing voices and seeing things and wanting to harm themselves, and are all up in an uproar, so, and that approach may be a little different than the approach that I just said.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that our first, as a clinician or as a previous admissions counselor and behavioral therapist, I wouldn't count that as my first kind of go-to. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, what if someone asks about labels, because you are going into a diagnostic field, right? Where sometimes it requires a diagnosis. And labels, sometimes that kind of keeps people from coming too. I don't want to be labeled as that,
Exactly.
So I try not to, unless, or like, I didn't really tell kids unless they asked, parents may have asked kind of what I was evaluating for, because sometimes individuals who may be experiencing these symptoms, and you give them a title, or you label it as a diagnosis, then sometimes you begin to believe in that is you. You know what I'm saying? That you are bipolar. No, I am such and such, and I experience being bipolar. You get what I'm saying? Or it's not me, it's what I am experiencing.
Well, I mean, it's like if someone is diagnosed with diabetes, you don't introduce yourself as,
I'm
I'm
diabetic. I'm
diabetic.
diabetes. Like,
Right? Yeah, you don't say,
no.
yeah.
No.
It's similar because I mean, there's you have a deficiency in insulin or too much,
Mhm.
whatever that diagnosis is as far as
Mhm.
being diabetic is concerned. It's a chemical imbalance,
Mhm.
just like
Mhm.
your mind, there is
Mhm.
a mental imbalance, and there's things to help.
Right.
On another note, would you say that relationships are important to the individual's mental health and
Yes.
how they respond, how your outside support system
Mhm.
responds to that?
And that, I'm sorry, that goes with, they went with one of the harmful effects of stigmas. It's one thing for the public to have a stigma, but then your family to have stigma. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's just crazy Uncle Joe. Like, or, oh, my auntie always like that. Well, if that individual really is experiencing um, mental illness, it's going to be even more difficult for them. I don't care if family member or not to come to you and talk to you about that. And I think, again, it goes with the lack of education, lack of knowledge. It is so important, and you can see that individual. I'll just take it from what I've experienced. Having a kiddo that I'm talking with, and we're meeting every week, and parents are engaged, and their siblings are wanting to know kind of what can I do when the individual says this or does this, or I want to be knowledgeable. How I want to create boundaries. When they're engaged, it puts accountability into the mix, responsibility into the mix. Now the individual have things and people to live for. I want to go to counseling. I want to learn how to deal and cope with this illness, because I have a family that's supporting me, or I have a family that is looking at me and wanting to help. Now it could be on the reverse side, whereas I don't have that, and it causes me to be even more isolated, even if I have a huge family. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
such a rare topic that I I'm a teenage girl or a teenage boy, and I'm experiencing all this stuff at school, but I have no outlet. I don't know how to talk about it, who to talk to. And now I'm experiencing depressive moods, and I want to harm myself, and I want to, start using drugs and alcohol. Having relationship with family, friends, counselors, social workers, your doctor, your neighbor, your pastor, your youth leader, anybody. Having relationships is very important. It's almost like you know, um, it's necessary. It's more beneficial to have healthy relationships than it is to not have anyone. Especially when you're already up against the public stigma. You know what I'm saying? You're already up against media when you see TV shows um, and comedy on mentally ill people and how they're portrayed, and what they really experience and versus what they really are not experiencing. So you have all of that up against you and have no one in your corner. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit much. And so I'll be reluctant to go and receive treatment also if I didn't have anybody. What's the point is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm already suffering. you know
Oh,
it's so
Gabrielle,
important.
I'm trying to. I'm looking at the clock right now. We have a few more minutes. There is so much more that I want to get out. I want to talk about this today. Oh, all right. I'm gonna jump in it. We talked about this yesterday, and you said that there's a difference between cultures when it comes to mental health or
Right.
mental wellness. And there's a difference between, I don't know how to say it at this point. Like, just explain what we talked about yesterday. Help me.
So cultural differences in how they respond to mental illness, maybe. Just in my experience, and I'm not speaking for every African American or Black woman or Christian woman, whatever I may be in the category of. I'm not speaking for the whole thing, but in my experience, I've heard so many comments where it's so natural for us to think this way. We've heard it. Oh, just pray it off, you know. Or, oh, I'm gonna believe God. I believe God is gonna heal me and deliver me from all this, stuff like that. All is true. That is, I totally 110% believe the word of God, believe the spirit of God, and all in between, right? But I do understand and know that God also placed people, situations, and circumstances for us to have resources for when individuals do feel or have a mental illness.
Yeah.
Just like a doctor is placed there, a registered nurse is placed there, a OBGYN is placed, you know what I'm saying? A bank teller is placed, a financial advisor is placed, a mental health counselor is placed as well, a psychiatrist is placed as well, for the betterment of his kingdom, to help with teaching and showing grace and showing mercy, showing all of these things to these individuals who are experiencing mental illness. I think with the cultural awareness, I feel like I saw it a lot in like our Hispanic and Latino cultures, where it's a lot like African American cultures, where what stays in my house, what goes in my house stays in my house, which is such. When I used to hear it, it was a fear thing, fear of the unknown, someone knowing about what's going on in my house, the fear of my kids or my spouse telling what's going on in my home, right? And the perception of what public may be thinking about what's occurring in my house, right? Or the perception and fear of discrimination because of what's going on in my house. So I understand why it was said, but it is so debilitating to the individual who is experiencing the mental illness, or is experiencing the trauma, or is experiencing the heartache and the suffering. It's almost like, I can't talk to you, mom, dad, or I can't talk to you, spouse, or I can't talk to you, child. Who do I talk to? Yes, I know I'm going to talk to God. I know I talk to God all the time. But then there is also people that God use to bring forth messages as well, to bring forth healing and treatment as well. And that includes our mental health clinicians and our psychiatrists and things like that. What I've seen in my white Americans, I've seen that they buy in. They buy into therapy. They buy in more prone. I would say they're more prone to buying into therapy and maybe psychiatric medication, things like that, in order to help, because they maybe recognize earlier that my kid is experiencing this and this is not necessarily normal. Whereas in our African American culture, sometimes we, again, public stigma, again, I don't want everyone knowing that my child is erratic and cannot focus and is up and down and jumping and this and can't do and failing in school, and I found a cut on them. Oh no, we're gonna come against that. Whereas the word of God also says faith without works is dead. You got to do something. Even when you pray it off, right? Even when you pray it off, you have to believe when you pray. That thing that you've prayed for is taken away. Like, you know what I'm saying? So there is still an action in regards to praying. There's still an action in regards to believing God for your healing and believing God for finances. There is an action. I'm believing God to pay my bills. I still have to go to work. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or I still make ways of income to come in. I still pay my tithes and offering. I still do that, even though God is my provider and my source. You know what I'm saying? Because it's you put his super on your natural. We are spiritual beings, those who have accepted Christ, and we're also natural also. And so I think the more conversations we have in regards to mental illness, and specifically to our brown and black cultures, even, I mean, Asians, they're more prone not to buy into it as well. Once we have more conversations like that, then, we might see a change and different. And I feel like it's coming around. It's just slower than needed. But the demand for it is increasing daily. The demand for treatment, the demand for acceptance, the demand for, resources is increasing. But the supply, has declined, unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. Say, for example, we've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been so weird. I know, time flies. That's what I'm trying to say. So I want to say this. Say, I've got an issue that I'm dealing with. Say, something traumatic has happened to me, and I've noticed that my behavior is erratic to some degree. Yes, I am praying on it, and I'm believing, and I'm meditating, but it's still, I'm still experiencing these things, like you said, trickling into other areas, or it's seemingly tormenting, or whatever it is. What is my, like, number one, how do I build a support system around me? Because I know I don't want to do this by myself.
Right.
And then number two, like, what steps do I take to step out and say, I need help?
So to that person, I would say, of course, we are always spirit led, right? That's first. And you be led by your heart. And sometimes God will always tell you, sometimes to go and talk to this person, or, maybe, go this way, go that way, so that he can open the door for other things to come in, for you to receive in other ways, right? So I would suggest to maybe find just that one trusted person, a person that you are able, or have had a track record of being able to talk with this person, maybe not telling them everything that's going on, but just saying, I need some help, and briefly kind of giving a synopsis of what's going on. So finding that trusted person, and then also understanding, or I say this, we Google everything, right? Don't we? We Google everything, and that's just a practical thing. Google it.
Yeah.
Google mental health resources in my area.
Yeah.
What are the helplines? Google it. You don't have to be educated about it. You don't have to know. Just like if I was experiencing physical symptoms, the first thing I'm gonna do is go Google it, right? I got this, I got that, and then you find out Google is saying you got cancer, right?
Yeah.
But you take that information and you do what you will with it. Meaning, when you go and you Google and you kind of find who is on the outskirts that I am able to kind of entrust what's going on, then I'm able to kind of choose, okay, I can go to this person. A lot of people don't know that if you have a job, most jobs have employee assistant programs. Then you get free sessions, free counseling sessions, some individuals being in school, finding that social worker, finding the counselor, your teacher, someone, a trusted person in the building that you have had or built relationship with, that family member that may be miles away, but you can talk to, So I think the first thing would be, again, finding that trusted relationship, whatever that may look like, your youth pastor, your youth minister, your friend, someone that can either pinpoint you in where to actually go. And I wanted to kind of give some resources too, just being here and we're talking about mental illness. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is a great website. There is all sorts of helplines. Being in Tulsa area, calling COPES. I used to have kids put COPES number in their phone.
That's COPES?
Yes, COPES. You can call it. It's a 24/7 our hotline, what they would do is if you call and you say, I'm feeling this way, sometimes they'll just talk to you on the phone. They'll assess the risk or the need of how high and risky it is, based on your conversation. They're going to get your demographics. And then also, if you are, I wanted to harm myself, or I've thought about this, or I've done this, they will come where you are.
Yeah.
No matter time, day, they will come. And so there is SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health website there. It is a lot of resources as far as how to connect to.
So, Gabrielle, what we can do is we can put them in the comments
section. Yeah.
And put their websites in there, and hopefully we can put a few of them in there.
That would be great.
Yeah. So after this, we'll have, a list of different 1-800 numbers and websites that we can go to, so that we can, if you need help, you don't necessarily have to tell us. Reach out, get some help. Got one more question for you. I know I told you I was 5 minutes, but I got one more question for you.
It's okay.
So say I'm a friend, and I am that trusted friend, and I've listened, and I've spent time listening, and how do I tell my friend that they may need that next level of help, and how can I be there to support?
Well, it's hard to say, and it's even hard to do, but if someone is experiencing emergent, or urgent mental illness or symptoms, like to harm themselves or to harm others, with a plan and action, they got methods, they have all of these, and I'm a friend that is receiving this information, my only thing to do is for their safety. Right? That is my first thing. You have to be okay with, the relationship going through a turmoil time. You got to be okay with, him or her not talking to you right then and there. But the first thing is safety, right? We want to because you love that person and your friend, I want you safe. And if I don't feel as though you are safe based on the things that you are telling me that you're experiencing, whether it's through text or social media or whatever, I'm going to call cops, or I'm going to call 911, or I'm going to call your parents. I'm going to call someone who I know that can get to you.
Yeah.
That I think you just have to be okay. If you're that trusted person, because they're trusting you, then they believe that you will put them in first regard. Right? So taking that responsibility and being that person, you're going to have to do some hard things, and that's okay, because it's for their good, it's for their safety, and that's one way to support. A lot of people don't want to, support when it comes to, them not liking you anymore, or them not being your friends anymore. No. That is a risk that I'm willing to take as your friend, as your loved one, because I understand and know that you need treatment, or you need something. You might just need an outlet. You might just need a connection. You might not need to go to a psychiatric facility, or might not need to get on medications or anything like that. But what I do know you need, I'm willing to help with that. And so just being, I think, that open door, but understanding that when that door is open and it requires action for their safety, that's the best thing to do.
Wow. Our time is up. I'm so sad. I have a whole list of questions. Gabrielle, thank you so much.
No problem.
So
thank you.
Brief recap. So we've talked about what a stigma is. We've talked about it being just the way you see something in a negative light. We talked about how those affect people that have mental health issues, or that may be experiencing episodes of just depression or related to some sort of a trauma. And then we talked about how we can be there to help and be a support, and that relationships mean a lot, even in these instances. So like I told you before, we're going to put the information in the comment section so that
Yes.
you can reach out. Like I said, you don't have to reach out to us. You can click online, call
Mhm.
those numbers. Hey, it'll be anonymous.
Absolutely.
But we are here for you.
For sure.
So until next time, we are going to be back on with Gabrielle Tate, and we're going to be talking about identifying toxic relationships. Hey, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for your time tonight. And this was great, Gabrielle.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. This is a passion of mine.
Yes.
I just love it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
It has been wonderful. Okay, so until next time, we'll see you then.
All right.